Welcome back to the Marcus Milione podcast. I am joined once again by Sean, and today we have a special guest. His name is Clay, aka Clurbs on TikTok, which is how I originally found him. And yeah, he is the first intern for Minted New York. He is doing a lot of design based stuff. And I originally came across him, like I said, on TikTok, mainly just because I saw the work that he was putting out. One of the biggest things that caught my eye was the attention to detail in the kind of the process of putting together pieces. And I think a lot of the stuff he was doing was kind of school related and some personal projects. But now we have him working on design related stuff for us, which is awesome. But before we get there, I want everybody to get to know like the background of Clay, kind of where he started when he was younger, because I personally don't even know. So I'll be learning just as much about him as you all will, which will be interesting. So thank you for coming on, Clay. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Super grateful to be here. So background wise,
Yeah, I
so
think like your intro to fashion, I would say,
okay,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
like that, and then when you decide, like when you kind of realize you had an eye for design.
okay,
Maybe before
yeah,
that, like
so
how old are you? What year? What year in school? Like, and then
All right,
and then
fair.
straight to fashion, I guess.
so I'm 20 years old. I'm currently in Midtown Detroit. I'm from a small town in mid-Michigan, about 2 hours north of Detroit. So I went to a gifted and talented high school. And they had an art program there. And I had a wonderful teacher named Becky Sullivan, and she's kind of who introduced me to art and design. And from there, senior year of high school, or going into senior year, I went to a pre college program here at College for Creative Studies, where I'm in my sophomore year now. And that's kind of where the fashion kind of swept me off my feet, I guess. So when I was in seventh and eighth grade, I was a shoe painter. So I
Oh,
would
okay.
customize people's like Air Forces and
Yeah,
Jordans.
there's a lot of
So I've
those now.
always loved shoes and sneakers. And I guess I was never into like runway stuff until I came here over that summer. I love the environment, I love the people, and it kind of just, I guess, took me by surprise that I loved the making so much. So
So in your high school, it was you said it was like a gifted and creative. So was it like a private high school, or is it part of like the public school system, but you have to kind of perform in a certain area to get in?
yeah, so it was a public school that you had to test to get into. And for the art program, you had to have a portfolio, just like going to an art and design college. So in elementary school, I had like my coloring book pages, like, and that was my portfolio. And yeah, so sixth through senior year, I went there because it was like middle school, high school, super small school.
Now, did somebody approach you about this opportunity, or was it like an application thing where you knew you wanted to go and so you applied?
For the high school and middle school,
Yes.
yeah. So my sister, I have an older sister, Claire. She's 4 years older than me, and she actually went there. And then I have two half siblings, and they also went there. My dad's an artist himself, so he kind of, I guess, saw what I was doing at a young age and kind of wanted to see where we could take it.
Is
Well,
your sister an artist as well? Like
No,
currently?
she's actually
Oh.
a singer.
Oh, wow. So an
So
artist,
yeah,
yeah.
and yeah. And she is now a high school music director.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
got the creative gene in that
Yeah,
family, that's for
yeah.
sure.
I guess it just runs right through all of you. That's crazy. Which I think like your dad being an artist probably helps him understand a lot more than most parents would
Mm-hmm.
if their child, just magically became creative out of nowhere and wanted to go and do that kind of thing in high school. There probably would be some inherent pushback from like a prototypical corporate America type like parenting. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that like gave you a little boost in actually pursuing art as like a viable option to like make a living.
Yeah, absolutely. He really, really wanted me to always go to art school. He came to CCS before it was even called CCS.
Mm.
It was called like Center of Creative something. And I have an older dad. He's in his 70s, so he kind of took that unorthodox routes, and he actually talked me out of becoming a physical therapist.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, so he was just like, you like go to this summer program, like try it out, and if you still want to go to university for physical therapy, like go for it. And yeah, now I'm here and extremely grateful for that conversation.
Now it sounds like your dad was kind of like the main person that like helped guide you, especially in the younger years. Was there anybody else? You mentioned the one teacher, but was there, your sister, obviously, anyone?
Yeah, it was primarily my dad and my teacher, and my mom has always been a huge inspiration as well. So it was mostly like my parents saying like follow your dreams, like follow your passion. Like you're obviously like shown skills in this, and it's do you want to spend 7 years of college to possibly work on rehab with like old people, or do you want to kind of try out this fashion because I've always loved shoes my entire life. So yeah, definitely my mom, dad, and teacher,
when
but primarily my dad.
when
Got it.
so like going into college, was it I want to work with shoes specifically? Like I know you're in technically accessory design, right?
Yeah.
So like
Hmm.
did you go in with an open mind of like whatever I find interesting I'm going to explore, or was it pretty much pigeonholed like right from the bat of accessory design and shoemaking?
It was actually bags. I
Okay.
went into it being like, man, I made this like crossbody bag at pre-college. Like I literally ripped off off-white, like an off-white bag, and I was like, man, I love making bags. And then first semester was kind of just like the basics, and then I made a sneaker at the end of the semester, and from there it was like shoes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I think one of the first videos I ever saw from Clay was your boot,
Hmm.
your canvas boot, which kind of, I mean, I think it blew up a bit in the fashion side of TikTok.
Yeah.
I remember I came across it, and your account was still relatively small at the time, and I was like, damn, that's pretty impressive because I saw you were in college, you're pretty young, and there's not a lot of people. There's two reasons it caught my eye. One, that you showed the background and the behind the scenes of how you were building it, and two, when you're an artist or practicing an art form, being able to post your stuff on social media like that and open yourself up to criticism from people who may not understand it or aren't really into that kind of thing can be very daunting for any form of artist in any using any medium. So I was like, okay, well, he believes enough in his work that he's willing to post it online. So it's like a good step in the right direction to just, making what you want and being confident in the design work that you put together. So I thought it was a really good boot.
Thank you, thank you. Those boots were kind of like the changing point in my life. Things kind of just like dreams started coming true, I guess, and from those boots. And I have them sitting right here on my desk. It's kind of just like a reminder, like where I came from, and
You want to hold
yeah,
them up for me real quick?
absolutely. I'll just hold the one up,
Yeah. Yeah, so this
but
is the boot that I saw. I was like, wow,
It's
this is
crazy.
crazy. What'd you make it out of? It's
yeah,
canvas, right?
it's reworked vintage military duffel bags.
Yeah. And so he posted kind of the process leading up to this finished piece, and since then has continued to post different projects that he's been working on. I remember he made I don't even know what you would call the leather boot, but it's insane. I
Yeah.
almost want to call it like a mule shoe because it's got like the hooves, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you would call it.
It's like I just call them like the knot boot,
Hmm.
and they're currently my mom's now.
Oh, really? Did
Yep.
you go into it knowing you were gonna give them to her, like using her size as the
N-
last?
no, not at all. And then like halfway through, I was like, wait, this is my mom's size. So, I mean, I was so done with that collection after like 4 months. So, and I was just like, I'm not gonna try to sell these. Like, I'd much rather give them to someone who kind of like was there for me throughout the whole process. So on Christmas, I surprised her with them.
That's awesome.
Now, was that first boot and then the not boot, were those school projects or were like
Yeah,
okay? And was it for the
yeah.
same collection or how does that work?
So I made the army boots. I made those freshman year, second semester, and those were for like a collection for the Henry Ford Museum, which is this historic museum around here.
Hmm.
And our assignment was to work with them, go through the archives, and then create a collection of 5 pieces and then make one. So that was the one I made for my collection. And then for this knot boot, it was a pick a designer or randomly pick a designer. I got Issey Miyake, and it was design 20 pieces, choose 5, and then spend the rest of the semester mocking up, patterning, and then prototyping, and then making a final for 5, and then having a full photo shoot, and then creating a lookbook for it.
What were the other
So,
four?
so I made like a hybrid mule hiking sneaker with like a removable cuff. I had a really humongous like sling bag. I had a water bottle holder that was pleated, and then I had a pleated belt.
Wow. I think, I
Jeez.
mean, for people that don't understand what goes into designing and like making prototypes, that is a lot of work for a semester class. I mean, I know just from what we're doing here at Minted, like, and to have to rush a design process, like you have no
It's the
time.
worst.
You have no time for getting like stuck creatively, because I know for me, I'll be working on something and then I'll be stuck, and so I'll take like a couple days off from looking at it. I won't want to look at it anymore, and I'll come back with fresh eyes and be like, well, now I see where we need to change things up, or there's an impractical part of the piece that doesn't serve any purpose to the end user. Stuff like that in a rushed time frame. You just like, I don't know how you operate in
Oh,
that.
it was the hardest time in my entire life. It was just, I mean, it taught me that I don't want to do that ever again. I'd much rather kind of like give the creative gears a break and have that, set of fresh eyes, because it got to the point where not only do I have that, but I have 4 other classes, and those one of those was like a making class, and then another was I was putting in like 5 pages of sketches a week, and it just got to be so overwhelming. But there was a point where it was wake up really early, work out if I can, and go to the studio from, I don't know, 10 until 10,
Jeez.
and then come home and go to bed. And that would be like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
So
It was horrible.
do you think that's like kind of ties into how the question I want to ask of like how you're enjoying school in general, but it to me seems extremely counterproductive in trying to get the best creative work out of somebody, like have it be, that's how you lead to burnout. For a lot of people who don't know how to
Oh,
manage it or who are like managing it for the first time, that's exactly how you get burnout.
yeah, I actually just watched your episode the other week about burnout, and it definitely made me kind of rework my time management this semester because I never want to feel like that ever again. And it was just total burnout. And that's kind of my issue with college is it's just like a remedy for a burnout.
Mm.
You don't have time to work on like personal work, and although like classes are wired to kind of put you in a path of success, some of the workload is kind of ridiculous. Um, and I remember freshman year, I was like, I love working this much. Like I'm doing what I love, like 24/7, like sun up, sundown. I'm being creative. I love it. And then I get to my sophomore year and I was like, this is no longer like a hobby anymore. Like this is gonna be my job. And if I keep going at this pace, I'm gonna hate it.
Yeah.
I think it's
And
interesting. Go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead, Sean.
I think it's interesting because like I feel like most people know what the corporate 9 to 5 or like 9 to 9 burnout is, but like not a lot of people are familiar with like what you do and like this creative, like you're always in the studio or you're always working on designs at home on your computer, and like so it's interesting to hear that like it's totally different, but it's the same exact thing. It can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was reading a book recently and it was called like The War on Art, and it was talking about like amateurs versus professionals, and it was talking about like the amateur works until he can't anymore and the professional kind of works with his time to have a healthy creative mind. And then it kind of talks about how a healthy creative mind is one of the most powerful things in the world. So it's definitely kind of made me think how I'm approaching this semester, especially when I'm balancing an internship as well as 15 credits.
Yeah, I mean, I think the traditional way that schooling is set up, especially higher education, is very much geared toward like the sciences and rigid stuff that you can just hammer over and over and over again, and it's a matter of just repetition. Whereas creative studies is completely different, and applying that same logic of just like hammering stuff over and over again, and it's important to practice the fundamentals and the basics in arts and creative studies, but you can't just force someone to be creative. Like if the juice isn't there on that day,
Hmm.
you're not going to get anything out of anybody creative. All you're going to do is make them end up resenting what they're working on, and then they're just going to move on to a new project and or quit altogether.
Hmm.
As you get
Yeah.
further along in your major, will you have more time to focus on the things that you really enjoy doing? Because, like, I know for my freshman and sophomore year, you're thrown a bunch of the core curriculum classes, and even if you're not interested, you have to do them. But like later, junior and senior year, you kind of get into like more specialized courses. Is that the same?
Yeah, so I think with art and design school, or at least mine in particular, they kind of give you those major specific specialized classes, at least one or two off the jump. And so like I have my fashion accessory design 101 and 102, as well as like my drawing classes. And those were kind of those like gen eds, basic classes you got to do to get by. But honestly, um, the one time where you have total creative freedom is senior collection, which is senior year, fall and winter semesters, and everything else is kind of like these fashion classes, whether it be boot making, advanced footwear, kind of these classes where you're given like the project and it's up to you to kind of move it into your like creative aesthetic, I guess. So a lot of these are already specialized, but it's still just like really, really, really fast turnarounds.
Hmm. Do you find a lot of people your age, like in your classes or even older, are doing any form of like real world work outside of school? Maybe like even in the summer, stuff like that, or is everyone just kind of taking class and not getting real world
It's it's
experience?
it's honestly a taking class kind of thing, and that's always been like my biggest worry is yes, I'm making these one of ones and they're extremely satisfying, but how can I turn this into something I can make a career off?
Mm.
So I know a lot of people in my grade, especially, have like little brands like screen printing and that stuff, and that's kind of their like side hustle. And a lot of these are very like good,
Mm-hmm.
and they're working really hard on it. But a lot of these classes are just like do this and you pass, and it's not like a like push yourself, especially with COVID too. I know internships are really, really rare, um, especially summer internships. And even if they are like internships people are getting, they're one, unpaid,
Yeah.
and two, they're with these huge corporations like Calvin Klein, Michael Kors,
Mm.
and they're kind of just not paying you. They're giving you a super strict, like creative aesthetic,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're just taking what you do.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay,
Yeah.
thanks for the free work. Like, go back to school.
Yeah, that's actually unfortunate. That is a perfect stereotype of a lot of fashion houses, of just, taking the work of unpaid interns. And yes, interns are technically, they're gaining good exposure working at these fashion houses. I get it, and they're boosting their resume, but nobody should be working for free. That is bullshit and something
Yeah,
I don't believe in at all.
me neither. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Collegium. It's
Yeah.
kind of this independent sneaker brand. And I saw that they were doing internships for people in LA, and it's paid.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's very refreshing to see like these small brands kind of take over, and I love it.
It's hard to also, if you're creative, to like be very invested into something. If you know the work's just gonna get stolen, you're not gonna get any credit, and then the internship's done, and like, yeah, you got to put it on your resume, but that's about it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good to have the experience, but that's robbery.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it like I'm torn, right? Because like I own a brand. Clay's doing work for us. We pay Clay, but we will be putting Clay's design work into production. It's always something I've thought about. Like, it feels weird for me to put something into production that Clay, the business, is going to make the money from. So that was why I always didn't understand, how are you not going to pay people that are working for your company, right? And I understand that it works that employees make things and then businesses sell them. That's kind of like how business works. But to have unpaid interns making stuff and then you're just selling you're selling it makes no sense to me from like a business ethics standpoint. Like, come on. And it brings me to my next point of like, do you think the school, so I know you're only in your sophomore year, but do you think the school so far has done a good job like teaching the business side of running, say, a brand or like a business at all? Like, there's so much that goes into this, and that's what one of the biggest things I told you, like, coming on board. Like, I want you to ask me, because I've had to learn all this stuff myself. There is no way to really learn it unless I'm googling it or going through it myself.
Yeah, I love my school, and I've always preached to go to art school, but they teach you nothing when it comes to business. Um, they do an amazing job on developing that creative eye and your language and how you present yourself as a designer and how to make, and it's amazing. But I'm taking a fashion business class right now, and I'm not learning anything. And I've learned more from this one paragraph Marcus sent in Slack, and he was like, "This is what a manufacturer is going to ask you." And here I am in business class, kind of just like sitting there, like on my Zoom lecture, and we're just talking about anthropology, which I mean is super important as a designer to see like what people need, but it's not kind of teaching how to translate your work into a business or how to work with other people.
Mm.
And that's been my biggest issue is they give you all these classes with extreme creative freedom to show who you are, but they don't teach you how to work as a team. Everyone is just like butting heads with each other. Critiques are like you're walking on glass. Like if you say something wrong, you're gonna get back talked, and it's like not the point of what a critique is. So it's all of a sudden just become like a competition of
Mm.
like who's the best in the class. And I just wish there was some sort of teamwork, because most likely we're going to be working for a team.
Mm.
And that's why this internship is the greatest thing ever. Like I mean, even you talking about like being paid, working together, it's like a dream come true.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been awesome to have you on board. I mean, I think in the creative process, especially in the school environment, like everybody was the best in their high school, and it was the same at sports, right? So everybody was the best, like a big fish in a small pond, right? And now you're all in college together making uh, creative things, which have inherent subjectivity to them. Like what somebody sees from their design eye while creating a piece is not how the world is always going to interpret it, and that is
Hmm.
okay. But to get defensive of like it has to be this way and applying their eye to other people's work and expecting it to be that way is really stupid in my opinion.
Yeah.
And you have to just be able to make suggestions and trust. And for a designer like you, it can be daunting because like then you start to question, well, am I even good at this? Like if you're constantly getting torn down when there is really no right and wrong. There are certain fundamental ways you have to do things or like techniques that should be used, etc. But you can't eliminate that subjectivity from pieces.
Yeah, and we actually take classes on subjectivity, and it's all about like people are gonna view work differently based on where they've come from, what culture they're a part of, what niche of society they're a
Mm.
part of, and that's definitely important to keep in mind. And I'm actually taking a bag design class right now, and I love it because it's kind of become this team environment. This is that first time in my 2 years so far where I feel like the students as well as the teacher are really invested in each other, and we can bounce ideas off each other's. And I think with how good of an environment art school is based on how many creative people there are, I think that's a really important thing when it comes to getting a product out or just working in general, is getting others feedback on what could possibly go like in this hardware or something like that,
Mm.
because I know taking it all on yourself and trying to critique yourself can be hard sometimes. And I think that's a lot of the time what causes this like competitive nature of school is, I'm having to do all this myself. Like I'm having to change things on my own. Like I pattern, mock up, make, I do this all on my own. So why should I listen to you? And I mean, I guess that can work sometimes, but it also creates a really toxic environment.
I was gonna ask, do classes ever encourage you guys to work together on projects, or is it always like your own project and you do all of the
Um,
parts?
it's usually you do all the parts,
Huh.
but
It's
when
interesting.
when we're designing those first like sketches, like for my bag design, three concept sketches, show them to the class, come back next week, and if you wanted to tweak your designs based on what some people said, like go for it. And we had a really good class, and I have a couple of good classmates in there that I have been in most of my classes since a freshman, and they kind of gave me some feedback, and that's always extremely helpful.
Mm. Yeah. Where how would you say your design process differs between schoolwork and the internship?
Yeah, so schoolwork, it's like here you have 1 week to design me something. And with the internship, it's more of we talk, I mean, we've had one phone call and we kind of talked about what we want to do over the next couple months. And now it's kind of in my hands to give myself a schedule, what I'm going to design this week or what I'm going to start this week. And it's no longer this like rush, rush, rush.
Mhm.
Like, give me 5 bags in a week. It's more like, hey, Clay, we have an idea for a bag that we'd like to get produced. Like, send me sketches whenever, and we can kind of talk about it
Mhm.
and like what works and what doesn't. And it's no longer this like rush.
S-
It's more of like I have the time to go out to the coffee shops, to listen to my playlist, to kind of walk around and get this kind of creative energy and get myself ready to get something out.
Speaking of which, it's nice knowing that like a person like you who's highly motivated, you don't really have to look over and like give them instructions. Like you just send stuff and you know, Marks and I always know in the background you're doing things, you're working on it when you have the time, and we know if like you don't have the time, you should be focusing on school. So it's not like this crazy high pressure, but we also think you enjoy it. So then
Oh, I
on
love
that
it.
free
Yeah.
time, like it's great knowing that you're loving, you know, using your creative knowledge to come up with this stuff.
yeah, I mean,
The
oh,
yeah, it's been mm, I'm so enthusiastic about it, and I haven't felt that way in a long time based on the constant like work, 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 work. Like give me this here, give me that there.
for people that don't really understand how the back end kind of the business side of things work, we have, or at least here at Minted New York, we have a Slack channel that Sean, Clay, and I are in, and we have kind of different channels for different things, but we essentially just are constantly sending stuff back and forth through Slack. Rarely are on the phone at all. Like Clay said, I mean, we only really had one conversation, and it was on his first day. But we send stuff back and forth in Slack. And when I come up with a new idea that I want Clay to work on, I essentially tell him about the idea and then give him a couple guidelines. Like for the bag, it was very much we need to have a certain type of pocket. We need to have a certain type of hardware piece that can hold keys. And then outside of that, I just want to give them as much creative freedom as possible. So there would, I think, maybe be 3 or 4 things that I said we must have, but it wasn't. This is how it has to be incorporated. I want him to just understand what it needs to have, and then he can incorporate it really however he wants. And he's sent sketches back, and I've been, and I've said, well, like this is how I see it. Maybe we could do it this way, and it's very much like a free flowing. Anybody can chime in on the sketches when they come across Slack. Like everybody's looking at things differently, and there's also the whole perspective of there's a practicality piece to all of the stuff that we make. So keeping that in mind, everything kind of has a purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that practicality a lot. Because sometimes it's like, how far can we push design? Um, and then, someone's having to hold their shoes on the runway and they can't wear them. So, um, I feel like design language wise as well, I think that's kind of why I really liked this idea of the internship with Minted I know that was a question someone asked.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like design aesthetics, design language, I feel like I had a good fit with Minted. And kind of off the bat, I was able to recognize like the direction that Marcus and Sean are taking this and the products that are coming out. And it was the question of like, how can I just add like tiny little details to kind of show myself personally, because it's not like I'm having to do these like really personalized products,
Hmm.
because I feel like Minted, their aesthetic is kind of already how I design. So I feel like it was a perfect fit for me to kind of come in, and I'm extremely grateful for it,
Hmm.
and to kind of do some work on accessories.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely seeing your design aesthetic before even contacting you um, was something I made sure that we would mesh with well with. So I take that into consideration. What like well before I even reached out to you about working together or whatever.
Now, this is a question I'm curious about. And I'm sure some people are wondering. Did Marcus reach out to you like in a DM even before like the internship? I'm talking like initial interaction. Was he just like these boots are sick, or how did that go?
I believe it was something with the boots. You may have commented on my video
Yeah, I
or
think so.
something like that, and I had been following you for a long time before that. Um, and then fall of last year, you DM'd me and you were like, "So when are you done with school?"
Well, I thought
And
you were a senior. Based on your
uh,
videos, I was like, oh, he's got to be like doing his wrap up projects. Yeah.
no, unfortunately not. But I mean, that was something that I was extremely excited for, and it came at I couldn't have imagined a better time for that DM to come in. I was in such a bad headspace, and I was like, "Gosh, do I like how am I gonna make a career out of this?" And then here I get this DM, and it's from Marcus, and he's like, "So when are you out of school?" And I was like, "I'm still a sophomore," and he was like, let's talk sometime soon." And
Yeah.
then yeah, from there,
Cause I was trying to like, but in the beginning, I was trying to get a feeler without like giving away what I was getting at of like potentially bringing you on board. And I think I asked if you were like if you had plans to move to New York or if you're ever gonna be in the city, because I assumed you were graduating. So I was like, oh well, New York or LA kind of makes the most next like logical next step for like a designer. So maybe he'll be here and then like we can meet up then. And I found out you were a sophomore. And I was like, screw it. I'm still gonna try to like bring him on board somehow. So I'm glad you were willing to take a workload while, like you said, getting your 15 credits or however many it is. Like doing that on top of schoolwork is I know very difficult, and that's why a lot of the time I try to not be hovering over you or even really asking like about the work because I know you're balancing so much.
yeah, and it was the perfect semester to do so, because this is like known through the department as the easiest semester of the degree. So I have basically like my fashion gen eds, and it's like fashion history, fashion business, bag design. What else am I taking? Uh, it's just kind of those easier classes.
Mhm.
So I mean, this is like perfect.
So we actually have I fielded a bunch of questions for Clay off the Instagram account, the Mint to New York Instagram account. So I put together 10 of them, which one we've already kind of talked about. And so we'll run through them with Clay and try to get your questions answered. Um, and I guess we can touch on it again, but the first one being, what about Mint to New York made you want to internship for them? I don't have the names of the people that asked these, but they're all good questions. And I know technically I'm Clay's boss, but like he's free to speak about the business however he wants. Like it's obviously no hard feelings if there's anything bad to say,
Oh,
you can feel free to say
there's not
it.
a single bad thing to say.
That would be awkward.
Um, I can't even explain how like perfect this is. It's at my easiest semester. It came at a time where I really needed it, and then it's exactly what I've kind of wanted, um, career wise. I mean, I don't want to come out the gate with a brand. Like I really want experience. I really want to work for people and with people, and to have this not only like industry experience, but like Minted is blowing up right now, and to see kind of the progress throughout time, and to be able to be a part of it and grow not only this brand but this community, is extremely inspiring. And I really, really like the community aspect of Minted. I think it's some of the most loyal and supportive fans. Like I had DMs when the news came out that the internship happened, of people being like, "Yo, Clay, like congrats on the internship, man." And to have like random people say that to me was just extremely inspiring and really heartwarming. And I mean, I've followed Marcus, and I know Sean kind of came onto social media later,
True.
especially TikTok, and to kind of see Marcus, and see how good of a person he was on TikTok, a very toxic app, and to finally see like a good person, just made me want to work for him even more. So yeah.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. The second question is, what kind of design are you in school for? Which we touched on, so like you don't have to go into it really much if you don't want to. Like, you know,
Yeah, just
accessory
fashion
bags.
accessory design.
Yeah.
So primarily shoes and bags, the occasional belt and wallet and sunglasses.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions I didn't include on here, but somebody asked, was when you're gonna have more like skeleton wallet card holders.
Someone actually commented that.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Uh,
don't know if you have an answer for this person, but
probably never. I think that was. I think I'll leave that in the archives.
uh, the third question is, where do you draw inspiration from?
Everyday life. I think the less you try to be inspired, the more inspired you become. I think the creative process is extremely mysterious and natural. So the less you stress and think about like, oh, I need this idea to come, the better the ideas come. I believe that there's ideas meant for certain people, and the people who get them are meant to do something with them. So
Yeah, I like that.
I'm gonna get that tattooed on me.
We'll quote you on that one. We'll put that one on the website. um, what are you most excited for with this internship? And I'll actually add my own question onto that. Is like, if there was one thing you want to learn that you don't think you're gonna get in school or that you'll really get anywhere else, like what do you think that would be?
um I'm most excited for the experience, and to translate my work into something that people can have. That's always been a big source of happiness, I guess. Like with the wallets, I slaved away for like 50 hours one week. It was my spring break actually, to make these wallets for people, and to sell those and for them to sell out was probably one of my happiest moments in life. And to see like some of my best friends using them till this day, and then to have kind of my work around the country was breathtaking. So to kind of be able to do that more and more, and to hopefully get it out to this great community of Minted supporters, that's what I'm really excited for. And I definitely think everything I learn here is something I wouldn't learn in school.
Fair enough.
That's
Yeah.
good.
I mean, that's kind of the point of real world experience, right? Like see how it actually goes on instead of like this is how it
Absolutely.
works in the classroom. Yeah. Um hmm. We went over how we met. That was question number 5. And question number 6, what are your goals for after working at Minted?
Yeah, so finish school.
Yeah.
Um, and then honestly, I have no clue. Uh, maybe once I'm had my experience with brands, with companies, corporations, whatever, I'd love to do my own stuff. But at this point, I'm kind of just enjoying the moment, enjoying what I've got right now, and then yeah, just finishing school.
Hmm.
But I have no, I guess, idea honestly of what to do after college. But I've still got a lot of time to figure that out.
I imagine you'll be like 2 times, 10 times even more, you know, well equipped after these next few years in college and getting more classes under your belt. Like it could totally change from now to then.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the less I plan about the future, the more surprises that just pop up. And I think that's all part of the fun, falling in love with the process. Marcus and Sean, you guys talk about that a lot
Mhm.
in your content, and I've been starting to live by that lately.
Yeah, just like, you know, realizing that you can set goals for yourself, but ultimately when you get there, the goalpost just moves further away and the goal becomes bigger. So just understanding in the day to day, like this is what I have to do to get to the goal and then the next goal after that. But I'm loving every part, and you don't have to love every piece of the process. There are days where it's frustrating for me, doing all these different things. But at the end of the day, you look at what you can enjoy out of it and what is nice about the process. And I mean, for me, I've talked about it before. Like I answer to nobody. I run my own businesses. Like, and that's been a dream of mine since I was probably 14 or 15 years old. So just while there are frustrations, the goods outweigh the bad like 10 to 1 for sure.
Absolutely.
I have a question, Clay. We talked a lot
Yes.
about like creative and designing and stuff. What do you do when you're not doing it? Like what are some hobbies? Like I know you go to the gym. Like what else do you do on your free time when you just don't want anything to do with all of the school work and that stuff?
Yeah, so my favorite part about this semester is I actually have a life. So I've got stuff to do outside of school. So definitely working out over the past few months. I mean, I've kind of worked out for the past 2 years, but I've been taking it really serious coming back this semester. So I've definitely kind of become a gym bro. That's probably my one of my favorite things right now. I love reading, going to coffee shops, and then vintage store shopping and antique stores and kind of finding vintage stuff. And then I've got two really really close friends down here, and a lot of the time I'm just chilling at their place and
Mm.
stuff like that.
It's awesome. It's good to have that stuff.
Yeah. The question number 8. I'm gonna skip a couple of these because we touched on them. But do you find it hard to keep up with all of the visions at Minted New York?
Um, I love it. Um, I don't. It surprises me because the amount of things you guys have in the works is crazy, and it's not like a hard to keep up thing. It's like how is Marcus gonna surprise me in the general channel on Slack this morning? It's like 4:30 in the morning, and he'll send like, oh yeah, this sample's coming in today, and I was like, wait, you're working on this too? And it's just it's surprising, and it's awesome. Honestly, I love it.
That's good. I'm glad. We have skincare samples coming next week, So
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
there's another little surprise for you. Last question here. How did your parents feel about the internship?
Yeah, they didn't believe it. They thought it was too good to be true. They were like, an internship from TikTok? And they were like, this is definitely a scam. And my dad, he's older, so he's always like, you gotta take the safe route. He was like, you can't do this. They're gonna steal your ideas. And it's always been funny to me because whenever I tell him stuff like that, instant reaction is they're gonna steal your ideas.
Yeah.
Because just in the past, like he's had his ideas stolen, and I was like, Dad, like give it the contract, give it some time. I started showing him your videos, all this stuff, and he is so confused with social media. He doesn't understand anything going on. But eventually, he kind of understood it and was like, no way. He was like, this is awesome, Clay. And then my mom, she's very big on Instagram. She loves scrolling through Instagram.
Mhm.
And I told her like about Minted and who you were, Marcus, and she was like, really, you guys look so alike. Just because like the glasses and the hair. And then she was like, are you serious? Like, is this happening? And I was like, I think so. And then as the contract came in, they kind of gave me a helping hand. We got to send it to one of the business people just because my parents own a small business, a small graphic design business and public relations. And he kind of looked it over, and then we kind of duked it out, um, us and Minted, and everything worked out.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
yeah,
that was my
first
first
reaction
contract.
was uh, they were concerned, and then they were extremely happy and supportive.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
I'm
I think
very happy to be part of that contract, that first contract.
I think it's hard, right? Because like especially for me, I've always thought about like at what point does a business become almost legitimate? Like a lot of people can start clothing brands or a lot of people can start brands and then if you tell people about them it in their mind it's more of like a passion project or like a side hustle. And so I always like wrestled with the idea of like when does this become legitimized and at what point when I tell people, will they stop assuming that I have a project and like I am somehow like I make no money from this and for some reason I must have rich parents that are like like subsidizing this entire thing. Like what do I have to raise venture capital at a certain valuation and have the venture capital name attached to mine in order for people to feel legitimate? Like that's the thing I always wrestled with because like I have no idea how to explain it to people other than like I own a business, and it's a real business. Like we have
Yeah, it's
earnings for last
legit.
year. Yeah, like
The other
Like
week,
this
the
is coming from someone who's a part of it now. Sorry for stepping on your toes,
no,
Sean.
no, no.
There's like mic delay. So like anyone who's listening to this, I apologize if it seems like I'm interrupting. There's just a little bit of a delay. But yeah, coming as someone who's come on to this business, like it's legit.
well, I'm glad we got the stamp of approval from Clay. It's a legit business now.
Yeah, I mean, the other week I noticed like people would be like, "What do you do?" in my TikTok comments or like, or just in real life, and I would always be like, "Oh, my brother has a small brand," and I was like, "Why am I telling this whole story? Like, why can't I just be like, oh, I work for Minted New York? Like, if they look it up, they'll find things. They'll
Yeah.
see it has a legitimate website. They'll see, all this stuff. Like, it's just, I guess it's because like I've seen it from the very beginning when it was just
Yeah.
you shipping stuff out from our basement to like now."
In the beginning, when people would ask and I didn't want to get into all of the details, I just told people I worked at a fashion startup. Like I didn't even say I owned it. I was like, "Oh, I work at a fashion startup." And then in their mind like you have a legit job. But if I said, "Oh, I have a brand Minted New York," you no longer have a legit job in their mind, right? It's so weird. It is the weirdest thing ever how entrepreneurship is treated with people that work a typical corporate job. Like if you're doing your own thing, you're either backed by somebody and come from like a rich family, or like it's just a project hobby of yours, not real.
It seems like there's
Yeah.
no step from like being a brand that like, you know, there's a niche group of people that know to like just being like a huge brand like Nike. Like there's this middle step that people I think just don't really like recognize it, and then they're like, oh, that's a huge brand. It's either a
Yeah.
huge brand or it's just like a small brand.
Or like a
Yeah,
project.
exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's something I still like don't even really know how to deal with. Like where I'm meeting with a a business lawyer to restructure the business and everything, and even she was asking me like what is happening. And for another thing, for people that are trying to get into maybe manufacturing things, whether it be fashion or just like, you know, product in general, a lot of times big manufacturers that are kind of like heavy hitters in the industry are going to look up your brand online, especially your website. And I've gotten emails back since our website is locked, you know, 99% of the time, because we're sold out, that they say like, we don't think you'll be able to hit our minimums. Like, come back to us when you're bigger. And I have to literally walk them through like, these are how many units we sell. This is why the website's locked, because I can't keep product in stock, et cetera, et cetera. And then the conversation completely changes, and now you're a legitimate business to them, and they want to do business. It's so weird.
Yeah, that's extremely weird. But I've always, I've always found fun in people like considering someone, whether it be a brand or a designer or whatever, an underdog, and kind of being that like gritty, like underdog. I think that's always been fun because, I mean, when I graduated high school and told my town what I was doing, they all thought I was just gonna, like, you're just gonna make shoes. Like, what are you gonna do with that?
Yeah.
And to kind of get to where I'm in now from then is one of the most satisfying processes, I guess. So I guess to draw like a parallel between that and Minted, to kind of see people like doubting the brand and then like handing them like, oh, like here, like you might want to think otherwise. Like I always just think that's a very satisfying situation.
Yeah.
And even drawing another parallel where you're kind of talking about like this, you're like, I'm working for a fashion startup. It's kind of when people would ask where I went to school, I would say College for Creative Studies, and they're like, what's that? So it got to the point where I was saying, they were like, where do you go to school? And I'd always say Wayne State, which is the university everyone knows that's like neighboring to my school. So it just got to the point where it was like, I can't explain this anymore. Like, I go to school to make shoes and bags, and that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, at some point you just got to believe in yourself, and like all the other shit just doesn't even matter,
Absolutely.
you know? But yeah, Clay, appreciate you coming on here.
This is great.
Can
Thank
you
you very
go ahead
much.
and plug your socials for us?
Yeah, the Instagram is Clay Barckholtz. Um, I'm tagged somewhere. I can't even explain how to spell my last name. So it's in my TikTok bio. That's better. My TikTok is Clerbs.
Yep.
CLERBS. And
Marcus
you
can link
find
it.
everything from there.
Yeah, I can link him on the Minted New York social media as well. And for
Awesome.
anybody listening on Apple and Spotify podcasts, if you could leave a review, that helps us a lot. And if you're listening on YouTube, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Maybe drop a like and a subscription. Appreciate you coming on here, Clay. And
Thank you for having
we
me.
will see you in the Slack.
Yep, I'll see you guys in about an hour or two.
Sounds good. Take care.
See you, Clay. I think he can exit out whenever.
Yeah.